House and Senate leaders announce a deal on a state budget bill. The House passes legislation reforming workers' compensation and bipartisan support for tort reform. Next.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.
Hello again, I'm Kelly McCullen. The House and Senate GOP leadership have agreed on a budget plan. Budget writers in both chambers say the bill needs no more changes, no more negotiations, and appears to carry enough support to sustain a gubernatorial veto. House and Senate Republican leaders announced a deal on a compromise state budget this week. It would spend $19.7 billion, allow all temporary state taxes to expire on July 1st, and cut spending despite restoring funds for state programs earlier budget proposals would have slashed.
We will have adopted a budget in what is, for recent memory, record time. And we will have done all of that in a bipartisan fashion.
In addition to starting sooner, we had our members meeting jointly. So throughout the process, the staff has been tasked with always having, when decisions are taken in a committee meeting or otherwise, always publishing a differences report so we can see how far apart we are.
Democrats oppose the process by which the House and Senate reached a budget compromise without officially voting to enter joint negotiations on a final budget deal.
Usually we allow people a month to have the process, and that's not going to happen this year. It was negotiated, you know, in the dark, over the weekend with the House and the Senate. We've got a conference report.
The Senate gave the budget its final approval on Thursday afternoon, sending it to the House for a special Friday afternoon session where a veto-proof majority passed the bill in the first of two votes scheduled this weekend.
Budget balanced with no tax rate increase and tax relief. It adds up to about $1.5 billion of tax relief for the people of the state.
It would have been better if the 1 cent sales tax had been available, but that has been hadn't been a choice to begin with. I mean, they made that clear.
The compromise budget restores state funding for all teaching assistant jobs and includes money to hire 1,100 new elementary school teachers. Local school systems across the state would be asked to cut $124 million, a higher amount of cuts than earlier budget bills. The budget bill gives school administrators sole discretion to make those cuts anywhere, and Democrats say it's that local discretion that's the backdoor method of firing teachers.
It's the oldest trick in the book in budgeting, where you cut things people will kill you for. You put a little bit back and you want to claim that you took care of them.
Medicaid service providers' reimbursement rate will not be slashed as badly in this budget bill. Historical sites and museums will see some funding restored. The UNC system will see its mandatory dollar amount of cuts reduced by $20 million. Overall, budget writers say $300 million was restored to K-12 funding and $100 million restored to the university system budget. UNC-TV is part of the UNC system and receives about 45% of its funding from the state.
And I think all of us know it's not easy. And I can tell you there's not a person in this chamber sitting on a subcommittee that's making these decisions that just struggling big time.
The budget bill includes a backdated extension of federal unemployment benefits. Democrats have argued for weeks that a benefits bill should not be attached to any other legislation, and they tried removing it from the compromise budget bill.
People are hurting, and we're playing political games.
It is time we pass these benefits. It's time we move this forward. And I'd say to you today, the quickest way to move this forward is to vote for this budget, let the House concur, and let the governor sign it Saturday, and these folks can have the benefits they deserve by Monday. It is a simple way to do it.
The attempt to strip the benefits language from the budget failed. Also removed as state revenue options are the temporary sales and income taxes due to expire July 1st. Republican leaders have called the tax expiration a cherished promise they insisted on keeping.
To me, if I give my word and those 13 freshmen that all got elected and gave their word on it, that's important.
The effort to strip that unemployment benefits language failed in the Senate. The bill is scheduled to receive its third and final House vote early Saturday. Then Governor Perdue would receive it. So far, the budget deal appears to carry the 3/5 majority support in both the House and the Senate, and that would override any potential gubernatorial veto. Governor Beth Perdue spoke to reporters Friday afternoon. She says she'll review the House and Senate budget deal line by line this weekend.
As soon as the House finishes the debate, I'll know that it's what it is, and then I intend to read every single word. It's what I've done with every budget that I've been a part of. I'm not going to sign anything until I know that it's a good, clean document, and then I don't know if I'll sign it at all. It's not predetermined that I'm going to veto it. I haven't made my mind up, but I am sorry that it's come to this.
Laura Leslie, reporter for WRL-TV, here with us. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much.
You're chasing this budget like I am. What do you make of it coming in at $19.7 billion and what appears to be a compromise on education funding?
Well, it clearly is a compromise, and the 5 Democrats who helped to broker that deal over the weekend said they stuck to their guns to get that number up there. They wanted the $300 million for K-12 education. They got that. They wanted $100 million put in for the UNC system. They got that. They wanted another $60 in Medicaid, and they got that, and some money for Golden Leaf as well. So, this was clearly coming more than halfway to the governor's total budget number of 19.9. The 5 Democrats who helped make that deal happen said it's good enough, she should take it.
Well, here's the deal. I've seen a veto go through before, been sustained after Democrats supported a Republican bill. So they support the bill and then also support the veto.
Right.
Could that happen in this case?
It could happen. You're right. House Bill 2, which was a the Health Care Repeal Act, that one was like you said, some of the Democrats voted for it and then voted to withhold or abstain to maintain the veto.
Yeah.
Sorry. In this case, though, they're saying that's probably not going to happen. And I think it's because, they put a lot of work into this bill. They were involved in sort of engineering the deal in the first place. And, the 5 of them have sort of signaled that they think it's a good budget and they're going to stand behind it.
It's dangerous to ask a news reporter what you think, but why would the strategy be for Speaker Tillis, maybe Phil Berger, to look to those Democratic crossover votes rather than look to the governor and try to deal with her and her team on a budget after a veto?
Well, part of it is this relationship, this rather dysfunctional relationship that the governor and the GOP leaders have at the moment. I mean, they seem to barely be able to talk to each other without breaking out into some sort of threats of this or that. These guys are working with them in the legislature, so that's always a more collegial relationship to begin with. Plus, these Democrats happen to be among the most conservative in the caucus, and several of them, I think 4 of them at least, voted, maybe all 5, voted for Speaker Tillis, for Speaker, over their former Speaker, Joe Hackney. So there was already an opening there that they might be receptive to Tillis's arguments about the budget, and I think that's why you saw them go to them. Plus, you're working with 5 people, you're working behind closed doors as opposed to working in volleys of press releases being launched, on the internet, and it helps to keep things maybe a little bit more productive and a little bit less confrontational.
What happens to Democrats who buck their governor and buck their own Democratic caucus on such a bill that has such heated rhetoric?
That's a good question because, on one hand, you could say these guys are sort of seeing themselves as the heroes. They're the ones who are going to make this deal happen and going to, get the budget in place, which is, of course, what everybody's been talking about being afraid of not happening by the deadline, right? On the other hand, you do have the question of 2012. How much does this weaken Governor Perdue? How much does this weaken the caucus? Speaker Joe Hackney said yesterday that he believes the caucus will stand united on other issues as well. But I think once you see those fault lines begin to crack, in that caucus, then the GOP leadership starts to see an opening that maybe the Dems can't stick together. And that's really the only leverage the governor has.
I mean, I've heard Senator Tom Apodaca say he can't believe a budget bill could get any better. You hear the Democrats saying this is the worst thing that's happened in this state ever in the history of the state. What is it? Are the differences that great between the governor and the House and Senate Republicans.
Well, the Republicans say it's not that great. They say it's $230 million, which is about right. They say 0.5% in K-12 funding, which is about what it is. However, the Democrats say the top numbers don't tell you the whole story, that there are ways that the money is spent and the cuts that are made and changes in priorities that they simply can't agree with. And so they say, the numbers don't tell the whole story. But, every year, all you need to do is switch the scripts, right? Last year, the Republicans was the worst budget in the world, and the Democrats were okay with it. So, every majority always comes up with the best budget ever.
We've heard the lines before. Laura, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks a lot.
Governor Perdue issued an executive order authorizing the resumption of stalled federal unemployment benefits. She and House Speaker Tom Tillis engaged in a Friday war of words about doing the right thing and the legal thing to get unemployment checks flowing.
If the governor actually does have the statutory authority to execute that executive order, then where in the world has she been for the last 7 weeks? And if the governor doesn't have that executive authority, then why in the world is she trying to break the law when she knows she's got a budget that's about to come before her that fixes this problem? And if she signs the bill, those unemployed persons will begin to receive the benefits as quickly as possible.
Well, the right thing is to work through the process. Not until yesterday had we talked to labor and decided that we could move in this direction. By now it becomes an economic emergency for 47,000 people. I mean, they've waited, we've asked them to do the right thing. I wanted to be partnership with the General Assembly, so there were no questions. And I'm just over it. It's time to do the right thing for these people. I'm glad that we've done it. And
the Senate focused on its budget deal this week, but the House passed a business tax cut package this week. The cuts would be temporary, but enough, Republicans say, to help the state's economy. As the Senate moved its budget bill, the House was moving a package of business tax cuts. It's House Bill 619, and it would temporarily reduce state business taxes for the years 2012 and 2013.
It will provide a personal income tax deduction for the first $50,000 of net business income a taxpayer receives during a particular tax year.
Republicans say 250,000 small businesses could be helped by the temporary tax reduction. But House Minority Leader Joe Hackney said he's seen his own studies on just how many jobs are created when taxes are cut. The tax cut bill gave rise to a debate of differing political philosophies.
Some people are so convinced that simply reducing taxes creates all these jobs, whereas if you look at the academic debate, you can find one here and one there, but the overwhelming opinion is that it creates jobs just marginally.
This bill cuts taxes, produces jobs. If you don't understand that when you reduce taxes, you increase jobs, we're in deep trouble here. You got to understand the economics of this. Now, I know we play politics a lot, but this is silly. Come on.
The legislation would also make changes to how a taxpayer's income is calculated for state income tax purposes. It also creates a provision so more taxpayers can deduct charitable contributions on their state tax forms. The combination of changes Republicans say will boost the state's economy.
I really can't believe we're having a debate about whether it's helpful to an economy to stimulate business activity. I mean, you'd think that would be a no-brainer.
The business tax cut bill sits in the Senate. The House is moving legislation to help minimum wage working adults pay for higher education. Scholarships will be given to people who have held a minimum wage job for 18 consecutive months over the past 2 years. They'd have to graduate from a basic skills course first and then meet academic goals to keep the scholarship.
This is a bootstraps bill to help independent students that are over 24 years of age and or married have an opportunity to improve their lot in life with more educational assistance.
Scholarships could be worth between $11,000 and $12,500 and would be given to people deemed needy. A bipartisan House vote approves reforming North Carolina's workers' compensation laws. The bill is designed to lower business costs and prevent injured workers from permanently receiving temporary disability payments. The House voted overwhelmingly this week to reform North Carolina's workers' compensation laws for future workers' comp recipients, not currently injured workers.
It's a bill that reflects that there's always going to be exceptions in a very complicated subject like this. but the exceptions can't drive the rule.
The legislation would make temporary disability payments expire once an injured worker reaches nearly 10 years of payments. That injured person would then be assessed for permanent disability coverage. No worker could lie about their health condition when applying for a job if their physical condition or health could lead to workers' comp claims in the future. The bill reflects a broad compromise agreement that earned over 100 House votes of support.
The second thing that I hope is punctured is this myth of out-of-control workers' comp costs in North Carolina. Folks, it just isn't so, and this compromise bill will further amplify that.
The bill redefines the terms under which an injured worker must find suitable employment. First, a job must be offered to them and not simply available in their geographical region. A suitable job must also fit within the physical limitations of a person who's been injured and who's collected workers' comp payments. But if a suitable job is offered, a person on workers' comp could not arbitrarily reject it. The bill heads to the Senate. A bill the Senate passed to fight Medicaid fraud cleared the House this week. It will launch a test run of having Medicaid clients use biometrically enhanced Medicaid cards. Local offices would receive card reading equipment that would detect fraudulent claims right there at the counter. The test project would be considered a success if enough money is saved for a local office to pay for its card reading equipment. A bipartisan House vote endorses some tort reform for North Carolina. This particular bill limits punitive damage awards and protects companies that sell products deemed safe by federal regulators. It's another bill supporters say will make North Carolina more business friendly. The House passed a version of tort reform this week. It limits damages a plaintiff may receive in lawsuits, the cap being $250,000 for punitive damages. But plaintiffs' medical bills would be paid.
This bill is about damages and what people who have been hurt can receive.
Well, that there are about 20 states that have some form or fashion of what we're talking about here today.
The tort reform bill partially protects companies from product liability claims. Drug companies could not be sued for effects caused by its drugs if the drug is FDA approved and its labeling meets federal standards. Drug makers could be sued if it's learned that they misled federal authorities or paid bribes to secure a drug's federal approval.
The FDA approval process is more rigorous than any trial.
I just don't see how we can tell our constituents, you're 100% in the right. It's difficult to bring these cases. You're going to have to fight an uphill battle. If it's a small case, you might not be able to get an attorney to represent you because they'll never be compensated for all the hours that they put into it.
Trespassers could sue property owners if they're injured while trespassing, but the property owner would have the right to use reasonable force to remove any trespasser. The property owner could not set up traps or conditions they know would cause someone's injury or death. Trespassers could not merely sue for getting hurt under this tort reform legislation. As with the other House bills, this one heads to the Senate after clearing the House. The House has approved an official study of natural gas exploration in North Carolina. The Department of Environment and Natural Resources would specifically study hydraulic fracturing or fracking. That's a method of harvesting natural gas from rock by using internal fluid pressure to open fractures in the rock layer. Lawmakers would set aside $100,000 as a research budget. The bill also contains language raising fees for drilling or abandoning oil and gas wells. A bill to increase state littering fines passed a Senate Judiciary Committee. An original proposal would have created mandatory fines for people convicted of littering. Those fines could run $1,000 for a first offense. The bill was changed, however. It will now give judges the flexibility in determining whether to fine a litter bug or make them work community service.
That's the change, so there is no mandatory fine. It's at the option of the judge.
Littering fines could top out at $8,000 for some repeat littering convictions. These new fines would take effect December 1st. This bill still has a way to go to be made law. The House debated a bill changing the scope of consumer loans. It was a fierce debate in the House over what's good and what's bad for consumers. The House voted late this week to change consumer loan laws that will allow for higher loan interest rates, but allow borrowers to borrow more money and pay it off over a longer period of time.
The consumer loan industry is highly regulated by the Commissioner of Banks, and the industry has required no changes in rates since 1983. Thus, the rates have been frozen for 28 years.
The bill would allow for consumer loan closing fees while restricting borrowers from carrying multiple loans with the same company. Opponents of the bill include the military and House Democrats. They say service members and low-income people are often targeted by these loans and would suffer under higher interest rates and fees.
The military has asked us for very little. The first time that they come to us and ask us for something, they plead with us to support them on this and not support this bill. We cannot turn our backs on them.
But bill supporters say higher loan terms with the fees and higher dollar amounts will give greater options to borrowers who are, after all, adults making personal decisions. Besides, consumer loan laws, they say, haven't been updated since the 1980s, and current financial limits state law places on consumer finance companies haven't kept pace with the cost of doing business. The Senate will consider this legislation next. A Senate-backed bill to require some drivers in car accidents to give blood samples to police passed the House this week. All drivers charged in death by vehicle cases, as well as suspected DWI cases, would be asked to give a blood sample. That sample would be checked for alcohol. If a driver in a death by vehicle accident has a breathalyzer result topping .08, wouldn't necessarily be asked for blood because you're legally drunk according to the breathalyzer. But if the breathalyzer results are underneath that but still show a reading, an officer would have cause to request a blood test. The House passes legislation that will implement new nutritional standards for school cafeteria snack food. The State Board of Education would set the nutritional standards and review them on occasion. No snack vending or soft drinks could be offered to elementary school students in this bill. Local schools would be allowed to craft stricter nutritional guidelines for school cafeteria snacks. This bill sits in the Senate. A bill called the Safe Students Act received its first discussion this week in the House. The bill would create a statewide uniform school immunization policy. This ties into the state's undocumented or illegal immigration debate because it would also require schools to keep data on which enrolling students are legal citizens and which ones are not. The Safe Students Act blends a public health policy proposal with a proposal aimed at tracking immigration's effect on state public schools. Representative Dale Falwell testified this week that many local school systems track immunization records for legal residents entering the public schools, but will overlook undocumented immigrants who cannot supply certified proof that a student has been immunized.
We want kids in our public schools who have immunization records, and if we're going to have one law for some people, we should have the same law for everyone.
The proposal would set state immunization certification requirements that would apply to all local school systems. The Safe Students Act would also aim to guarantee a student's age prior to that student enrolling in public education. Representative Falwell testifies students with official birth certificates will have school officials scrutinize that documentation, while those without that documentation don't face that scrutiny.
But this deals with, are we going to continue to have double standards as it relates to the health of our children and immunization, and really knowing what a child's birth date is when they're allowed to enter public school.
A second provision of the Safe Students Act proposal would require school principals to ask all new students of their immigration status. It's a measure that earned the protest of immigration rights groups who say that question will prevent parents from enrolling their children.
In this state where we do have a right to education, I think those concerns have to be taken even more seriously. Parents are going to be very afraid to register their students for school when they know that they're going to be asked this question.
Other immigration advocates say local school administrators are facing too many state mandates as it is, without adding immigration data collection to their job.
And to add this burden for them to now check the legal status or immigration status of these children is unconscionable, especially for a state like North Carolina that is an education state, and we pride ourselves in our education.
Representative Falwell says illegal immigration's growth in North Carolina makes researching its impact important.
We have to set the policies at the state level, because what we're doing on immunization, public health issues, and what we're doing on not having physical research, not to deny entry into our K-12 education, but we must have physical research of the impact that illegal immigration is having on North Carolina.
Right now, the Safe Students Act remains in the House Education Committee. Democratic Representative Marcus Brandon believes school students will benefit if they can craft their own educational plans. His bill would let students outline their strengths, their weaknesses, goals, and ambitions for their education. The plan would set realistic standards and would follow the student as they move towards graduation.
You cannot ever have true education reform unless you are going to be able to start giving power to students, to let them have the opportunity to communicate what is the best way for me to learn.
Students could begin crafting their educational plans beginning with the 2011-2012 school year. Representative Becky Carney's effort to boost CPR skills among young people earned full House approval this week. Her bill would require that every high schooler receive CPR training before graduation.
It is chest compression only. There is no mouth-to-mouth. It's recommended now that chest compression works just as well as alone.
The CPR requirement would take effect next school year, but this bill still needs Senate passage. As you surf the internet this week, check us out. Be our Facebook friend, why don't you? Facebook.com/Legweek. We have an email address, legweek@unctv.org, and you can follow us on Twitter. Our handle for the show is @NCNLegweek. You can also search Kelly McCullen, that's me. If you want to watch this show online or share it, visit unctv.org/Legweek. That's our show for this week. We hope to see you next time.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.